Hello, everyone. My name is Sierra Jones, and I'm really grateful for this chance to share my story and perspective in this type of conversation. When we talk about stereotypes and misconceptions in education, especially around race and ability, it really does hit home for me. I've lived it as a student, and I see it now as an educator in the workspace that I am in, as well as a teacher when I was once teaching in math. So today I want to talk about a specific stereotype I've learned, experienced, walked through, and how it shaped me and how we can do better for our students. So let me go through this introduction. We're going to talk about kind of like the personal and professional lens of race and abilities in education, stereotypes, personal experiences, and solutions, and then some of my shared experiences and what I had to do to push for equity in my classroom. So let's first start back to my fourth grade experience. That was the year I was actually diagnosed with dyslexia. I remember struggling to keep up with reading and how it made me feel. Like I was failing, and I was also behind in my reading. Even though I wasn't really behind in my reading, I was actually ahead, and I really enjoyed learning. Thankfully, I had a teacher during my fourth grade year who really saw me. She never made me feel less than. She worked with me one on one, gave me time and space to complete my assignments, and always encouraged me. Honestly, she helped me keep my confidence during a time when I couldn't easily just shut down. Um, I felt like she was really the marker who kept pushing me outside of my parents. But then fifth grade came, and it was definitely a different story. The teacher put all the black students, students of color, in a group that was classified as the C group, and that would be considered the lowest group. We had A group who had the top, B group who was kind of in the middle, and then C group was the lowest. I still remember how she would tell the other teachers we rotated to that we were behind and struggling academically. But the craziest part was that the A group, like a lot of those were students who were considered higher testers, but in the C group, we also had high test scores in many other areas as well. So we weren't necessarily behind, we were just being misjudged. That was a moment for the first time I truly saw how race and assumption about ability can come together to create real harm for me as a student. It didn't matter what the data actually said. They really just took it upon themselves to put their bias in there. So the data actually sometimes does show a little bit of what students learn, but sometimes it can also be a misconception as well. So it's best for us to really get to know our students. So stereotypes in focus. It ultimately, the experience just kind of reflected a larger issue in education, like the belief that black students are less capable or less motivated. I've seen it in my own classroom as I used to teach math. I've had the opportunity of observing, and the research kind of backs that up. Like Ferguson in 2003 talks about how teachers' expectations are shaped by race. And then Skiba and others also in 2011 showed that these biases affect everything from behavior referrals to academic placement. So I definitely can say that during my time teaching in rural area, urban populations, as well as suburban areas, it was pretty much the same across the board. The referrals and behaviors were often given towards students of color. So when we don't say it out loud, those unspoken assumptions shape how students are treated, what opportunities they get, and how they're seeing themselves. So when it comes to like what do we do in terms of challenging those stereotypes as educators, we have to be intentional about breaking those cycles. So first, our curriculum actually matters. When students don't see themselves in what we teach, it sends a message that they don't belong or that their stories don't actually matter and count. Culturally relevant teaching, like what Lansing Billing in 1995 talks about all the time. Uh, she's like the mother lode of all types of culturally relevant teaching. She helps students keep their identity and succeed academically. We also have to create spaces for our students' voices to be heard. When kids can bring their full selves into the classroom, such as their culture, their language, their interests, and even their experiences, they show up differently. And especially in math, I saw it all the time the moment I included students' culture, their interests, their experiences in the actual lesson and instruction. Students were able to connect a little bit more to the actual instruction. Uh, we see more of that complete picture of who they are as learners, as well as just their experiences and what goes on in their neighborhoods. And we have to reflect on our own stuff, such as our biases and our assumptions, because those things show up whether we mean to or not, they're still present. And then we have to also not forget the power of our community. Families and communities have so much knowledge about our students. And when we invite them in, we are more aware and in terms of our partnerships, as well as just how we start to think about our students. So it's really involving what our community looks like through bringing them into the experience of the classroom, as well as just kind of the lived experience, such as like giving students examples that are around maybe the corner store that they walk to or the gas station they pass by on their way to school when they're riding a bus. Like, it allows them to see like, oh, my teacher really finds value in what I live and experience, as well as it allows the students to feel like they are actually being heard and seen. So action steps that I think as educators like that can be taken, just a few things that I found helpful when pushing back against those stereotypes. We just don't want to group students based on assumptions. Like, really use the data as well as just actually talking to the kids. Sometimes tests can be skewed to a way where students are just not going to show up in their best way. But when you have conversations with your students outside of just giving them a paper pencil test, comes to find out that your students actually know more than what you think they know. Also, just be honest with yourself. If you're constantly surprised when a Black student is advanced, then just like ask yourself why. It also goes for any student who may surprise you. I found myself falling into this trap when a student would do something that I'd seen them in the hallway just kind of seem very lazy at. I came to find out that that student had a lot going on in their own personal lives. But I also identified and tapped into something that they really enjoyed about math, and I tried to use it to capitalize it. So honestly, just putting your own personal stereotypes to the side, and just observations, and just have conversations. Build lessons around students' interests and strengths, not just the standards. Mention that as well. Of course, Lansing Billing also talked about that. And then create spaces for support. Like for my fourth grade teacher, I think she's probably dead by now, but I did get the opportunity to go back and visit my fifth grade teacher a couple of weeks ago, and it was a great conversation for me to let her know that she really didn't believe in me as a student, but look how far I came now. And I really challenged her, as she has 3 more years until retirement, and just to think about things a little bit different and how she approaches each and every student. So that also goes a long ways when having a teacher who supports you. So, just some final reflections. What my journey taught me is that one teacher can either reinforce a stereotype or completely disrupt it. I'm grateful for the teachers who saw my potential all throughout the other years with my diagnosis, and I'll never forget that one who did not. She stood out the most. I try to be the kind of educator who disrupts, who questions the system, and who sees brilliance in every kid because they deserve that opportunity. So thank you all for listening to my presentation, and good luck on yours.